Hello, guys. Welcome, everyone. Just for those of you who don't know me, I am Peter Kolizny. I am a security instructor here at INE. I have over 12 years of experience in networking and network security. I am also a Cisco certified associate, professional, and expert. Network security was always my focus. It is my focus, and it will probably be my focus. This is why you will see me as the instructor who conducts this session. I'm gonna start our webinar with an overview of the topics that I planned for today. And I think that it makes perfect sense to make a introduction to the certification to CCNA Security, because this is what this session is all about. Just to make sure that we are all on the same page with what the certification offers, why people tend to study for CCNA Security. We will then briefly discuss CCNA exam changes. So those changes that Cisco planned for February next year. As some of you may already know, the changes, they affect certifications at pretty much every level from associate up to expert. And Cisco plans to consolidate all CCNA exams into one known as CCNA version 2. So I will want to give you some recommendations in terms of what your plan should be, whether you want to keep studying to the current CCNA security certification, or maybe would it be actually better to look at this new exam. We will then discuss recommended study approach, take a look at some of the study resources. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the tactics, and of course also the sources of information, books, videos, lab environments, stuff like that. We will take a look at this in the second portion of this session. And those strategies, by the way, this is all gonna apply not only to the summer break studies, but also non-break periods, like when you study after work, after school, or at any other time. Okay, so just a brief overview of the Cisco CCNA certification. Per Cisco's website, this is an entry-level certification program for the security track. And what they tell us is that with a CCNA security certification, a network professional demonstrates the skills required to develop a security infrastructure, recognize threats and vulnerabilities to networks, and mitigate security threats. Okay, so in my opinion, essentially, the reason why you may want to get a CCNA security certification is just to be able to understand and learn about the current security technologies deployed in modern networks, be able to distinguish between them, deploy, configure, troubleshoot. It's just so you know about the solutions and platforms that are currently used in the industry to protect different businesses. Now, the reason why people tend to study for CCNA certification, the reason is going to be different. So motivations are different. Now, I personally think that there are actually two main groups of people who pursue this certification, and one is going to be people who want to learn about certain technical topics or technologies. Like for instance, when you typically, let's say that you typically administer managed network as a network admin, routing and switching is your focus. At some point, your manager says that they want to bring a new security appliance. It's going to be a firepower, a firewall system, and someone is now supposed to install this appliance, manage it, configure and manage the whole system. So you want to learn about a particular technology or maybe set of technologies. This is going to be this first group of people. And then the other one is going to be people who tend to, they plan to change their job role or maybe just focus in terms of what they do. They want to challenge themselves, or maybe they want to relocate, they want to find a different job, they want to get a salary increase. So I'm going to say that job role is going to be the second major group of people who study based on my experience. This is my personal feelings about those two main groups of people. So the motivation is generally different, but I would say that these two, maybe three use cases, the groups of people, it's probably the most common motivation. Okay, let's now talk about the actual requirements for this certification. So for some reasons, you want to get your CCNA in security. You know what this certification is about, and you want to pass the test to get your CCNA. Now, there is going to be a prerequisite to obtaining a CCNA certification badge, which is going to be one of the three other certifications that you need to, at least one of them, you need to have one of them in order to get your CCNA security. So the simplest out of those three to get is going to be the CCEN certification. It's the Cisco's entry-level certification for networking. I believe what they call it is the technician level position. So you get really the foundations of networking in this case. Okay, another option is going to be to get the routing switching CCNA. This is your second option. And option number 3 is going to be to already possess one of the CCIE, one of the expert level certifications. Now, in this case, you will probably not really hold the security CCIE. It probably doesn't really make, in most cases, it won't make sense to go kind of like down the ladder from expert down to associate. So most people, they will either have to have the CCENT or a CCNA routing switching certification, maybe some of the non-security expert level track like DC, Collab, route switch. And the actual requirement for getting the certification is, of course, to pass the test 210-260 implementing Cisco network security IINS exam. This exam, you can take it in one of the Pearson VUE locations. Let me find this on the Cisco's website. Let's take a look at the overview. We will get back to the updates in just a moment. Okay, the exam is, let me open this link here. The exam consists of 60 to 70 questions. It is a theory-based exam that the base duration of this test is 90 minutes. Okay, so what it means is that the exam consists of a set of questions. Some of those questions, they will have just one correct answer you will have to choose. Some of the other questions, you'll be supposed to select multiple correct answers. But the good thing about this is that Cisco is gonna tell you exactly how many answers, correct answers, you are supposed to select to answer the question. And as I said, the registration is, you can schedule the test from the Pearson VUE website. So that's the really basic information about the exam. As long as you have one of those prerequisites, valid certification, CCENT, CCNA, or routing switching, or any CCIE, and you pass the test, you will obtain the CCNA security certification. Now, in the beginning of this session, I also mentioned about the upcoming changes to the Cisco's curriculum. And specifically at the associate level, at the NA level, Cisco plans to replace all current CCNA exams with one, which is known as Cisco Certified Network Associate version 2, where the code of the exam is 200301. So this is what we will see. It goes live next year. It's gonna be February 24, 2020. And as long as you study to the current CCNA security certification, because that's the assumption, you probably ask yourself a question: what are your options in terms of the study path? Should I keep studying to the current CCNA security exam, or maybe should I go for this new exam, which goes live in about 8 months? Now, I believe it's about 7.5 months, how long you still have to take the old test, the CCNA security, versus February 24th is when you will have to take the new CCNA exam. So your option number one is going to be obviously to start studying to the new exam. Maybe you have no experience in networking, and you have a very low experience in networking, and you don't feel like you will make it within the next 7 or almost 8 months. You want to study to the new test to have more time to pass it. But this is not the option that I would recommend for most of you. Now, the reason that I wouldn't recommend this option to most of the current CCNA security students is that if you take a look at the blueprint for CCNA security, the current exam, maybe let's take a look at the exam topics. And I will also open a new tab. We will take a look at the new exam. I'm gonna say go to the CCNA security website and just take a look at the updates. Right, so these are the topics for the current CCNA security 210 to 60 versus if we take a look at the new one, 200301. It's going to be those topic areas what you need to master to pass the test. Now, a good thing about this new exam is that there are actually no formal prerequisites to this test, but from perspective of most people who study to CCNA security, if you take a look at the new exam, the only section that is kind of like relevant to security is section 5, which is called Security Fundamentals. And it's really the basics, some of the basic technologies that Cisco chose they wanted to include in this new certification. Versus if we take a look at the current exam, we've got 7 sections, all related to security. And we will go over those blueprint topics later in this session. What I want to focus on now is your options. So the reason that I say that I don't recommend to take this new CCNA exam, like kind of like stop studying to the CCNA security, the current exam, is that most people, if you think about what I mentioned previously, most people, when they shoot for CCNA security, they are looking to learn certain technologies, or they want to learn security as a whole. So for those people, it doesn't make any sense to study for the new test, because this one is more of like related to fundamentals of networking as a whole, kind of like all tracks one by one, from wireless through routing and switching through collab. We also saw some of the security topics, but not really a lot of them. So for those of you who really want to pursue CCNA, the security technologies, features, platforms, you want to change the track, or you want to learn about technologies, I would go ahead and say keep studying for the current 210 to 60 test, because it contains much more topics that are still valid for security comparing to the new exam. Of course, in this case, if you want to prove your skills, you will have to pass the test before February 24th next year. So as I mentioned, you have around 7 to 8 months to do this. If you fail the test, of course, which is something that I don't recommend, you still have a chance to use this knowledge, but instead of going for the new CCNA, which again for most of you will not be a valid option unless you, let's say you are new to networking and you want to get up to the associate level. You want to get any CCNA. You don't really care about security that much. It would be probably better to go for the CCNA 2.0, but for everyone else, I would go ahead, keep studying to CCNA Security, because even if you fail, you can change your goals, you can set the threshold higher, and you can start studying to CCNP Security. And the reason why you may actually want to do something like this, we take a look at the new CCNP exam. Let me show you that. And again, I'm talking about the updated exam. So the one that goes live on February 24. We take a look at the certification. Notice what they mention here under prerequisites. They say there are no formal prerequisites for CCNP security. They advise you to have some experience, but you don't really need to have any type of valid certification like the new CCNA, CSAN, anything else. You can move on, jump into the CCNP track directly from your CCNA security studies. And if you plan to do so, you will have to pass 2 exams. Because the CCNP, they broke it down into 2 pieces in terms of the certification exams. We've got the core technologies exam, which is heavily weighted. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 concentration exams, where in order to get the CCNP, you will have to pass the core exam. It's more of like the base exam, foundation, and 1 of the concentration exams. So not all of them, just 1. So if you feel that you like the firewalls, you like the technology, it comes easy to you, maybe you've got some ASA experience, you would probably want to go for firepower exam. You want to learn about identity management, you want to learn about identity services engine, you will go for this one. You are using, let's say, some sort of content appliances in your network, you've got some experience with them, you can go for the email or web security appliances exams. Finally, we've got those VPNs and the automation and programming path. So only 1 of those concentration exams would be needed, plus, of course, the core to get CCNP security. And CCNP security is, of course, much more, gives you much more knowledge. It's professional level exam. It has greater value than just CCNA. So this is good news. Even if you fail your current CCNA security, just go ahead and shoot for CCNP. Right, so let's now take a look at the actual blueprint, because from this point on, I'm going to focus on the current certification, the CCNA Security 210 to 60. We've got 7 main topic areas, from security concepts, first secure access, VPN, secure routing and switching, Cisco firewall technologies, IPS, down to content and endpoint security. So this is what you will have to master, at least the basics, because that's the associate level. in order to get the CCNA. So if you take a look at those one by one, the security concept section, if you take a look at the actual topic areas, we've got 4, from common security principles down to describe network topologies. They are not really related to each other. The goal here is to give you foundation, teach you foundation that you will be able to use as you study to individual technologies or appliances. So they want to make you familiar with terminology, with certain terms, but it's kind of like that those are not really related to each other. You'll have to know those concepts, this basic stuff, to understand other areas of the blueprint. So for instance, let's say, to understand VPN technologies, you will have to know the cryptography concepts, like what's encryption, what's hashing, what's digital signatures, and so on. Now, in the second section, we've got secure access. This is all about management plane security and authentication, authorization, accounting. So this serves more of like an introduction to advanced identity management, plus it includes some of the identity management technologies like .1x. VPNs, virtual private networks, is all about secure connectivity. This is a security track, so we will be thinking about secure VPNs, site-to-site, remote access, and of course basic concepts, terminology, protocols, methods. Then secure routing and switching, we've got a certain control plane security features. We've got the routing protocol security, some of the features available on Cisco routers, and then the remaining portion is all about layer 2 security features, attacks, and mitigation tools. A Cisco firewall, this is pretty self-explanatory, but notice that what this section focuses on is going to be the ASA. It's also here. So this is ASA, this is ASA, this is the basics, this is the basics, and this is iOS. So pretty much ASA, in terms of the actual technologies, it's going to be pretty much ASA plus iOS. Now, firepower. I believe that one of the first sections, section 1, security concepts, that somewhere here they may actually want you to understand the difference between next generation and regular firewall. Now it's probably not in this blueprint. Okay, but no firepower in this case for firewall technologies. Okay, IPS, this is more of like theory-based section, so you get the feeling of what this technology is supposed to do, how it works, what's signatures, what's a blacklist, all those different terms, and then content and endpoint security. Another one which is, I would say, more of like based on theory. So what solutions you can deploy on your endpoints, like PCs, like laptops, like even phones, to protect them from certain threats, and also how can you protect the content of the communication as the sessions are flowing through your network. So a lot of different topic areas, again, much more than on the current, on the new CCNA certification. Right, let's now quickly take a look at the strategy. Let me go over the strategy that I want to share with you. Guys, this is also what I used when I was studying to my Cisco exams. I would say that in the first step, because this whole strategy in case of the associate level exams, I broke it down to 3 separate steps. And in general, my recommendation is going to be to focus on technologies one by one. So you don't really want to jump back and forth between the topics, like read a little bit about VPNs, then a little bit about firewalls. I would try to focus on a single topic, technology, and I would want to, first and foremost, try to understand why this technology or feature was created, what problem it is trying to solve, and what's its basic operations, and where you could apply this technology under what circumstances. Because in some cases, it will be possible to use more than one solution for a problem. And the primary source of information in this case, this is what I recommend, is going to be to use certain books or watch certain videos. And now whether you want to use this or another option to start your studies will eventually depend on a person. So some people, they prefer to watch videos. They want to start with videos. They want to get some explanations from the instructor. Some others, they want to read about the technology at their own pace. And finally, the third group of people, they just mix these two sources together, which is probably the best option. So you may want to start reading about a topic just to get a basic feeling of what it does, and then you can take a look at the videos to see how to use it and to learn a little bit more about the technology. In the second step, ideally you should also seek for at least some hands-on experience. And in this case, I mentioned that whether you want to do this or not will actually, it will apply. Whether it applies or not will depend on the technology. Because remember, we are talking about the associate level studying, the NA certification. So in this case, not all technologies, you are not supposed to know all technologies from a hands-on perspective. It will certainly help if you do, because practicing on your own gives you additional insight to the feature, to the technology, and it also forces you to think about why you do this or another piece of configuration, why you put it on the device, when you choose this or another option on the GUI. It essentially enforces better understanding of a technology. But if we take a look at the blueprint in our case, and notice the wording that Cisco uses on their blueprints. And it's not only at the NA level, it's also for CCNP and CCI tracks. So under some of those topic areas, they use a word describe, maybe identify. In some other cases, they say classify, maybe compare. Okay, then we've got use, configure, verify. On the other hand, they mention explain. Essentially, so what it means is that you are not generally supposed to know the implementation details, even the basic ones, as you study to the CCNA security exam. Many of those technologies, they will only look for a basic understanding, high-level understanding of a feature, of a concept, of a platform, so you can describe it, so we can explain what it does and so on. But when they say configure or maybe even verify, it generally means, or use, it generally means that you should have at least basic level hands-on experience with this particular topic. So for those topics, I would want to practice them. Some people, they tend to watch videos because the instructors typically show you how to deploy a technology, but I can tell you that until you start doing the configuration, until you start practicing on your own, you will miss certain things. So it might be needed to read, take a look at the snapshots, the pictures in a book, or watch a video to pass the test. But to really understand technology, you will have to start using it. And then the third step is going to be the a deep dive, which is going to be more of like looking at some additional functionality of a feature or just technology, doing some more reading, practicing more, watching some additional videos, also using some additional source of information, maybe simply using Google. If this was professional level or expert level, I would also say using the documentation. Well, documentation is probably not a good choice for CCNA students, but it's there. You could still take a look at that if you want, because if you plan to progress your career in this track, you will eventually have to use the documentation at some point. So these three is what makes the, in my opinion, foundation, and you can apply those tactics to pretty much every single track. Now, in between those three steps, I would also go ahead and say that you should take notes, as many notes as you can, because this is something that you will then use as the primary source of information for your review sessions. And the reason why you want to review the things that you learned is that in most cases you will not just want to learn technologies to pass the test, you will want to retain this knowledge so you can use it as a foundation to build on top of it later as you progress your career. And for this to work, you will have to do those review sessions initially every day, then less often, but you will have to review this material for probably at least a couple of months until you feed it to the long-term memory. Don't be afraid of asking questions for things that you didn't catch for the first time. I can tell you that in many cases there will be things that you will be not able to, questions that you will not be able to answer, even having access to those good quality materials like the books or videos, just based on the fact that certain things were omitted by the instructor because the assumption was that you already know this stuff. And it's going to be especially true for people who start working on a new track, like if you start with almost no knowledge about the track. So for those cases, I would go ahead and say take a look at one of the Cisco forums. And in our case specifically, it's going to be the CCNA Security Study Group. You can take a look at that. There are a lot of experts that will be able to help you with your questions. And there are some researches that I found on the internet that specifically point people to study more often than less often, but for longer. So what I'm trying to say here is that, and this is also my observation, I noticed that when I study more often, like let's say every day, but I make those sessions shorter, I learn more than if I were to study, let's say, less often, but I would make those sessions longer. So what I'm trying to say here is that instead of studying for, let's say, 5 or 6 hours every second or third day, it's better to study for 1 or 2 hours every day, because this kind of keeps you in the loop. And basically the explanation why you should do more sessions is that people typically retain more as they start the session and as they finish it, as they end it. So you typically don't get much from the middle of the session. Right, so this is the strategy. This was the these was the tips I wanted to share with you. Now we will now take a look at the actual resources that I recommend to use as you study. And I want to start with a video on demand. Of course, in our case, it's going to be the all access pass solution, what you can use for this purpose. Just go ahead and take a look at streaming.ine.com. And what I want to show you specifically for CCNA Security are going to be two types of videos. We've got what we call a curated playlist, and we've got so-called technology videos. So this stuff is going to apply to CCNA Security. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to log into my INE account, and I will go to All Access Pass. So it takes me to streaming.ine.com. First, you have to be logged in to access the actual videos. And maybe let's start with the curated playlists option. We take a look at CCNA Security. So there are essentially 4 courses that are part of this CCNA Security curated playlist. So this is going to be your one of the I would say 2, maybe 3 places where you wanna what you wanna look at. Now the second one is gonna be the let me go back over here, and I'm gonna use the search bar. I will say CCNA Security. So you may also want to look at this course. This one is somewhat outdated, but it was specifically meant for 210 to 60 II and S exam. And finally, the most up-to-date set of courses is gonna be when you take a look at the we will have to filter to get to what I want to show you. I will filter by Cisco, and then I'm gonna click on technologies. And in this case, I will actually have to show you those courses one by one. So let me find what I want to show you first. We will open them in separate tabs. I'm gonna start with a Cisco iOS infrastructure services, and then virtual private networks for beginners, hardening Cisco iOS, okay, Cisco firewall technologies for beginners, network security fundamentals and concepts, also layer 2 security for CCNAs, and infrastructure security. So we've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 individual courses. The infrastructure services, this is something what you want to use in case of CCNA security to learn about DHCP and also network address translation, including IP version 6, plus potentially DNS and SLA. You don't really want to look at the first hop redundancy. This is not needed for CCNA security. You know, in case of virtual private networks for beginners, it's the entire course. This one is meant for CCNA security certification. The same as, let me take a look at this one, right? Same as hardening Cisco iOS. So these 2 I would look at, I would watch all videos. What else? Cisco firewall technologies for beginners. This is also meant for CCNAs among other students. You want to take a look at all of those videos. The network security fundamentals and concepts. Okay, same as with the previous ones. You want to see all the content. The same as here, a layer 2 security for CCNAs. And let's take a look at the last one, infrastructure security. Now, infrastructure security, this one is actually, this is too much for CCNAs. You don't really want to look at this course. This one is meant for CCA, for expert level students. So we saw 6 courses plus potentially I would also take a look at a wide area network technologies for beginners, this one, but just one of the videos, which is internet-based WAN. So this one explains VPNs and shows you certain VPN technologies that can be used to kind of like build a wide area network over the public backbone. Right, in terms of reading positions, there are actually 4 books that I personally recommend for the CCNA security studies. We've got the official certification guide, this one here. Okay, portable command guide, this is more of like for configuration, syntax, verification, and configuration syntax. We've got a separate book for firepower threat defense. So even that the exam doesn't list the firepower, there are still questions that you may see from this topic area. And this position, integrated security technologies and solutions, this is technically meant for CCI students, but it contains a really good overview of most, if not all, technologies, security technologies, technologies listed on the CCNA Security Blueprint. And it also includes configuration and some of the examples. But since the overview is so good and it gives you really nice information about those technologies, I would also take a look at this position at the end as you finish the CCNA official cert guide, a portable command guide, and also firepower threat defense. Maybe let's quickly take a look at them on Safari. We've got the CCNA official certification guide, CCNA security, I'm gonna say portable, the 2nd edition. So it's gonna be this book. What else? It was firepower threat defense. It's gonna be this position, 2017, and one more, integrated security. And maybe let's just say integrated security Cisco. What's the book? Okay, I made a typo here. Integrated security technologies and solutions, volume 1, not the other volume, just volume 1. It's a pretty recent book. So if we take a look at the, maybe let me order those as how I would approach them. I would start with the official guide, then portable command guide, FTD, and integrated security technologies. So this first book is what you want to take a look at from the beginning to the end. It discusses pretty much every single section from the blueprint. And just to make it clear, it's 2015. Okay, then the other one, as I said, is more of like a recap. It also discusses the theory, but it also shows you commands and verification. Like for instance, if we take a look at, maybe let's just take a look at securing the management plane. Okay, the difference is that it is meant to focus on the configuration syntax and also certain verification statements. So if you want to recap, just kind of like memorize the commands, it's going to be a good position to use. Okay, firepower threat defense, I would, in this particular case, I would only focus on the introduction, on this whole introduction history. You definitely not want to use look at this section. Okay, FTD on ASA 55X series. Yes, you may want to look at this as well. But what else? What else is going to be important to look at in this case? The FMC, you want to read about that one. And also, okay, VMware, you can skip this. And then the basic troubleshooting and administration of initial deployment, management network, this section, licensing and registration. And you can also take a look at the deployment, let's say in the routed mode. So I would take a look at those sections. And then for the integrated security technologies and solutions, what do you want to look at here? Chapter 2, infrastructure security and segmentation. Okay, wireless security, that's probably too much. Maybe just a security overview, this portion. Okay, this is probably too much. This is too much. And then firewalling with the ASA, I would read all of it. Next generation firewalls, iOS firewall. So many of the information you will get in this book is going to be too much for the exam. But since the previous positions, they, especially the first two, they don't cover all topics. In my opinion, it's just better to read at least once about those. Maybe you will just remember certain things, and it's going to be much easier for you to pass the test. Like if you didn't take a look at this position. And of course, web security appliance and email security appliance. And this is also what you want to look at in this book. Okay, and then the other thing you will also want to use at some point, at least for some of the topics, as I said, is going to be to get some hands-on practice. And the way you can do this, like if you don't have a dedicated lab environment in your work in the office, you might want to build an emulated environment. And there are two main solutions for this. I can personally recommend Viral, which is, maybe let's take a look at this as well. Let's go to, we're gonna say Viral, we'll go to the main page. Viral is a Cisco's virtual lab environment for those platforms. This is pretty much all you need. I would say it's 80 to 90% what you need to use for CCNA Security. You've got those virtual routers, virtual switches, and you've got your ASA. The things that are not included are WSA, ESA, but you can use our racks to get basic, feeling of how to deploy those. And this is something that you deploy as a software on a server or on a PC. The Fusion Pro, this is what you will use for if you've got your Mac. If you use Windows or Linux, you will go for workstation or the player. Now, the difference between workstation, Fusion, and player is that player is free of charge. These two, so one for a Mac and one for Windows/Linux, these are licensed. And I don't remember exactly what's the difference, but I think that you could pretty much easily use the player. It doesn't have all the functionality you need, but you will be able to use Viral on this basic virtual environment as well. And the solution costs almost $200. You can emulate 20 nodes in a single lab. If you want to take a look at some additional information about Viral and how to use it for your certification preparations, you can take a look at one of our videos. Let me quickly find this for you. I'm going to say INE viral. Let's take a look at that. It's just one session, but it's Brian McGann's video. The Brian shows you how to use the environment, how to build basic topology, and also discusses features offered for, well, in our case, it's going to be obviously the security track for CCNA. So we can at least take a look at some portions of this video. And then another solution that I personally didn't use is GNS free. It's another method of, it's another environment, virtual environment that you may also use to use as you study to CCNA security. Of course, the other option, you can get access to the entire rack from us. This one is specifically meant for CCIE level studies, but you can still use this rack to build topology that is going to work for you as you study to CCNA security. So what I would recommend would be to, well, take a look at the overview video for our racks if you are new to the system. I'm going to say how to use. Now, this is technically a session that is meant for CCNA and CCNP routing and switching students. But since many functionality of those different racks, like routing switching versus security versus, let's say, DC, is the same, you can take a look at some of those videos to understand how to use our system. And finally, also the actual video that you can use to help you build a topology on the security rack, like what you would need for the CCNA security. It would be to take a look at my introduction to CCNA Security version 5, which is over here. And you would look at the other resources, because the topology of the security rack is somewhat convoluted. So I kind of like guide you at least partially as how to use this environment for security labs. Right, that's pretty much what I got for today. Do you guys have any questions to this session? Okay, I don't see any questions, so I want to say thank you everyone for coming to this session. You guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you back in our next webinar. Thank you.